Welcome to our Pattern Unboxed podcast. We are up and rolling. We have a VP of sales, or what's your title?
Head of new partnerships. So I head of new partnerships for the 3P, our core business.
Cool, yeah. Head of new partnerships, Doug Jensen. I guess I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. So Doug Jensen, like I said, head of new partnerships here at Pattern. Been here over 5 years. Before that, 15 years or so in software and helping a lot of companies build D2C presences using technology and so forth. And found Pattern, 5, 6 years ago, and brands figuring out marketplaces is a whole separate thing. So it just fascinated me, and very similar to building out D2C, and but it's often more complicated. It's global. It's got its own nuances that are often underestimated. So
Cool. Tell us about your path to Pattern. I know you just mentioned you did like 15 years of working with D2C, but can we get into like from graduating college to, now the role that you're sitting in now?
yeah, I mean, I did right out of college. I worked in sales ops for a big software company. This was way back in the day. This is Novell, who competed against Microsoft for Microsoft Office and Exchange and so forth. So this is like old school software days, and worked in sales ops and loved that. It was like very data centric, very much how do you help companies use your software, and how do you find them, and how do you connect with them, and kind of went through a bunch of different roles from helping with demand gen to working directly with brands to sign software deals, and then helped 3 different founders build out their go-to-market motion. That was really fun. One of those was acquired by Adobe, and that's now Adobe's Marketing Cloud. So like I said, the D2C technology play was kind of my DNA for a long time, and so that kind of, for me, paved the path to come to Pattern and help brands figure out marketplaces.
What was a defining moment in that path? Was it that acquisition? And then also, what was it about Pattern? Like, where were you at in your career where you're like, okay, it's now time to make a change and go to Pattern? Was someone at Pattern recruiting you, or did you know about Pattern? You're like, oh, this seems like, something that I want to hop on, or was it post that acquisition and you were looking for, something new?
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in Salt Lake, so Salt Lake's not a massive market. There's only so many companies doing like really interesting things, and so I was a little bit aware of Pattern, and then someone started reaching out, and once I figured out that this is a data-centric software way to go tackle marketplaces, I was very intrigued, and so I was like, well, yeah, I would be interested to talk about that, because that was what I was doing for brands on D2C, and I think it's just fascinating. It's moving products, selling products, building companies and brands is hard work. It's kind of high stakes game, and there's a lot of data and so forth that can help you figure it out, and a lot of technology. And yeah, I like technology. It's fun. It's always changing. It stays fresh and new, and so that's kind of how I think about that.
So what, obviously you've been in technology and been in software and also been around brands. What is unique about Pattern from a software perspective and a technology perspective compared to the other places you were at before? And then also, is there anything that you can illuminate around our services as well? Because obviously we're a software company or a tech company, but we also, like, our whole thing is being partner obsessed, right? And there's an element of, white glove service there. So is there also something there that's in the Pattern DNA that kind of blends well with our software and technology as well?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think Pattern is uniquely focused on marketplaces. That's a unique thing. Whether it's a TikTok shop or Amazon US or Tmall in China. So you think about Shopify has kind of become the main platform for D2C, e-commerce. And I think Pattern has the opportunity to be the de facto marketplace partner for brands. So I think that's super unique. Marketplaces, it's interesting. So when I first started helping companies figure out technology for D2C, we were literally working with a title called the webmaster. Well, the webmaster was a guy in IT that was in a dark office that no one talked to. And it was just like, well, I got to code HTML and spin up the site. Well, that evolved over time. So you got a CMO, you got an analytics head, you got a social head, you got all these roles. It's very well built out. To me, marketplaces were following the exact same trend, which is like, yeah, I got an e-com person. Well, that's not enough. It's severely under-resourced. So I think Pattern is uniquely focused on marketplaces. I think that's unique. A lot of folks that have joined us from, say, even Amazon are just in shock at how much data Pattern has. So I think Pattern's data repository is very unique. Being a seller across many marketplaces, being laser focused on automated bid optimizations, being laser focused on, what kind of content converts at a higher percentage, being focused on how to syndicate and publish content, being focused on analyzing TikTok videos for virality. I mean, there's a bunch of things Pattern does really well with data collection. And then from a software standpoint, some of the same things I mentioned, which are like syndicating content out and creating efficiencies, and bidding on keywords, keyword phrases that are less expensive, less competitive than your competitors are bidding on. I mean, I think those are the three things: narrowly focused on marketplaces. I think, software that makes it more feasible, more possible, and then a large data set that is very unique.
Do you think that's what, I mean, you can't really hop on a Zoom or go to a conference nowadays without people talking about AI. Do you think that's why we're in such a strong position from an AI perspective? Is that like before all of this AI buzz that now, the whole general zeitgeist is aware of, that we've just been sitting on these like lakes of data that we can now actually turn into like, using AI to optimize that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, AI is great if you have a few things, right? You've got to have a good model. If you're creating a video, you need like a video model. If you're creating content, you need a model that's good at content. If you're writing software code, you need a model that's really good at that. So these models, at least today, and they're changing fast, tend to be like really good at a thing. So depending on what you're doing, let's say you're creating content for your marketplace listings or just e-commerce in general, you need a model that does that. So I think the Pattern team, is being technologists and understanding which models to use, has done a really nice job there. But then a second major component is you have to have a great data set. So yeah, I think Pattern's uniquely positioned with this awesome data set. So it's like, all right, I can create images now, but what should I put in the image? Well, if you can benchmark against others and figure out what's converting at the highest percentage, your answer on what to create, you have the answer. So I think, yeah, that's a reason Pattern's pretty uniquely positioned to help brands, especially in e-commerce and on marketplaces, use AI.
And with AI and how Pattern is implementing it, and obviously since we're a brand accelerator, which means we do a lot of things just across e-commerce, what is the most impactful side of our business where AI is like really starting to show an impact? Is it the content generation? Is it the listings? Is it stuff with optimizing 3P? Like, where is it immediate that we're starting to see immediate results from AI?
I think content is a big one. I mean, using proprietary data to figure out what content converts, and then, Pattern's created some hardware that trains AI to be able to make and generate content in an accurate way. Most AI is not that great today at creating accurate content. So Pattern's created some awesome hardware that makes it possible to train the engine how to do that. So that's kind of a combination of a few things. I think that's a good example. But probably like a lot of companies, being able to generate software code and build product faster because of AI, automating redundant processes where you have a lot of human involvement. And running marketplaces, a dirty secret in most software companies, and definitely in running a marketplace, is that there's a lot of manual effort. You have a lot of platforms, and these platforms have ticketing systems and humans you have to interact with. So, just getting your content up created is a challenge sometimes, but getting it published and getting it to stick, that can be like your whole week wasted on that. So, I think AI is helping us definitely improve some of those processes and do more with the same resources.
Totally. And also, it's another, on top of AI, like a theme that I just, from someone working at Pattern, obviously AI is always brought up, but then also just globalization and other emerging markets. Can you talk about Asia? I know obviously it's a big continent, but I'd love just to hear your thoughts on, Chinese brands, and also what it's like selling with Coupang in South Korea, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think Asia is a massive place. I mean, it's something like 2/3 of the world's population, right? So this is a massive place. I probably think of, at least in the marketplace world, think of Asia maybe two ways: China first, and then there's other distinct, unique markets. But I kind of like to break China apart just because it's so massive. It's the largest GMV e-commerce market in the world. Much larger than the U.S. and EU, UK kind of thing. And so there's big marketplaces there, and there's a wide variety of marketplaces there. Amazon in the US and in Europe and a lot of markets is pretty dominant, 80, 90% market share. In China, it's a very diverse marketplace. You've got Tmall, you've got JD, you got Douyin, you have a bunch of these different marketplaces. I think China is distinct and unique in that way. And I think actually China is the pace setter for a lot of commerce, a lot of social media interaction and so forth. In China, they call influencers KOLs, key opinion leaders. Well, I think still to Western society, it's kind of like, oh, you got these influencers and they still feel new. Well, in China, this is not new. This is just the way. This is a normal Tuesday. You've got live streaming 24/7. You've got promotions running all the time. You've got a whole network of KOLs out there doing the thing. And so I think they've pace set, and their digital experience is much more rich than it is for us in a static, go to the product description page, decide if you want to convert or move on. This is much more interactive, much more involved in their life. So I think Chinese markets have been a pace setter for that. Also brands, GMV on Amazon US, 40 to 50% of that comes from China brands. And I think in our Western mind, you could just be like, oh, these are just manufacturers. These are legitimate brands, and just think of these as smart companies, just like a US-based company, just like a European-based company. These are smart business people just out there hustling. They're in the arena trying to make it happen. And they're doing the same things that brands everywhere else are doing. They just happen to speak Mandarin and be based in China. And so think of running Amazon US from China, which almost all of them do, at 40 to 50% of Amazon's GMV. This is no joke. These are legit, phenomenal brands doing great work, who actually mostly are aligned with us. You spend time with them and you're like, I could hang with you guys. This is fun. I like you. And then there's a bunch of other markets like South Korea. South Korea is kind of a trendsetter market in Asia. You've got Coupang as the top marketplace there. You have a couple other marketplaces that are active there, but you have that marketplace about 50% of market share, and very similar to Amazon in that you have fulfillment mechanisms made possible by the platform. Not as much ad spend going through that as you'd see on Amazon, much more product promotion heavy. That consumer really is interested in product pricing promotions. So you have some unique things like that. In Southeast Asia, you have some complexities, like some marketplaces, some countries don't allow cross-border trade, which would be maybe I have product in Singapore, but I ship from Singapore to Malaysia. Well, sometimes cross-border trade isn't available, so you've got to set up a local entity to be able to operate there, and sometimes the governments are just hard to work with. They want to charge you $1 million to set up your entity. It kind of feels like extortion, but so there's all these nuances to some of these marketplaces. So navigating all that and figuring out how to make the most of marketplaces is not for the faint of heart, but you can find big wins, a lot of success, depending on your product, depending on the TAM you're going after.
Got it. So just in this conversation, we've been talking about AI and how we're implementing AI with, our data set, and we're talking about, breaking into new global markets. But I think it's like a fun exercise and maybe potentially something we can clip. And I'm sure maybe you saw the video that we made at Accelerate when we went around and we're asking people, so what does Pattern do? And obviously we do a lot, because even when I came to Pattern, we got acquired. I'm like, damn, there's it took me a minute to kind of wrap my head around all of the different things that we do. So someone who's in a sales leadership position, how can you boil down what exactly Pattern does in an elevator pitch type form? And then also I'm curious to hear from a sales leader like yourself, competitors, because there's really, obviously you can't be there's no selling without, there's always going to be someone else nipping at your butt being like, I can sell, we can do this just as good. So what is kind of our elevator for the very layman's person that's just kind of coming across Pattern? And then what sets us apart? I know you mentioned what makes Pattern, a unique place, but from a sales perspective, if we have a bake-off with a potential partner, what makes us win business versus others?
Yeah, I think kind of elevator pitch wise, I think of Pattern as a tech-first marketplace distributor. And I think each of those words matters. Tech first, definitely the DNA here. This is get great data, build great software to go fast on on marketplaces. Marketplaces, I think, is really important because there are a lot of marketplaces across all regions, and consumer loyalty has spiked towards marketplaces. I mean, think about yourself. If you can get it on Amazon and it's Prime and it's to your house at 5 p.m., probably going to buy it there, right? You got 5% back on your credit card. There's all these reasons. You got subscribe and save. There's all these reasons to be on a marketplace. Consumers have felt that trend globally. It's not like a regional phenomenon. It's a global thing. And then distributor. So Pattern makes it really simple. You basically get a PO every week from Pattern. We buy and sell your stuff. And so the business models are totally aligned. We buy the goods. We take title. We can only make any money if we move goods. So we're totally aligned to go grow this together. And for me, a brand just has so many balls in the air, so many things to juggle. If I break e-commerce into two things, D2C and marketplaces, if I can hand the marketplace keys off to the best and largest marketplace seller, and I know it executes at the highest level, all right, that's not a hard decision. So that's the way I kind of think about Pattern, how to think about it, what we do. And then maybe even more generally, I just say we try to just make marketplaces stupid easy for brands. And they're underestimated on how complex they are. Like I said earlier, you could spend an entire week on one ticket trying to get one issue resolved, and you did nothing else. And that is so frustrating and so underestimated by teams that think about, well, I just push Prime, I just push buy now, and it shows up. Well, making all that magic happen takes a lot of work.
Totally. So, obviously we're here talking about Pattern and all of our capabilities, but I think something really important to note is that part of why I think at least everyone who I've spoken to at this on the podcast and people I work with really enjoy working at Pattern, and I think that's because of the quality of brands that we work with, right? Because we could have all of the tech in the world and have all of the optimization in the world, but if the brands that we're aligned with, like you said, aren't good brands and aren't good products that we actually believe in, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like you could have the best producer in the world, you could have Rick Rubin or whoever, and if it's a crappy song, no one's going to listen, right? And from my perspective, I've loved all of the supplements that I take now are all Pattern brands that we work with, right? What are some brands that you love that we work with, or any kind of just great stories that we have of we saw a brand, we know we could help them on this marketplace. We went out, we won that business, and then we optimized what they're doing across marketplaces.
Yeah, I think, to your point, the Rick Rubin part, I think people want to be part of something that's growing. People want to create something, if you're, go to the movie set idea. If you're on this movie that's new and cutting edge and different, there's a vibe about it, right? Everyone's interested. They want to be part of that, and I think Pattern's in line with that. If you think about the consumer shifting towards marketplaces, consumer interest being there, and all of us having seen that impact our lives. Being able to get what you want in a timely manner at a great price, it genuinely boosts quality of life. So being part of helping brands execute on that, you're creating something new. There's a lot of marketplaces. They're not all owned by the same thing. They don't all work the same way. They're all changing, evolving. They're all dynamic. And so being part of creating and making that easy and accessible and profitable feels exciting. And so I think that's a big part of what people buy into here at Pattern. And to your point on brands, a lot of brands have come in and been in the model, and I think it's an interesting thing because a lot of things I've worked with where a brand says, okay, I'm going to partner with you, or I'm going to buy this thing, they fully understand it before they do that. I feel like with Pattern, there's so many components of what Pattern does, from logistics to forecasting to maybe applying transparency stickers to keeping you in stock to running algorithmic keyword bidding to all the things that a lot of brands that come on, they only know 40 or 50% of what they actually get. And as they get deeper in the fold, they kind of are like, oh man, how did I ever do this before? Because I totally underestimated how many different things I had to do to compete at the highest level. And because marketplaces have grown so favorably with consumers, the size of the prize is massive and growing. So it fully justifies putting ample resources on it. So I think most of the brands that have joined, they kind of realize that over time, and they're just like, okay, now I know how to tap into this. I've got the horsepower I need to go do this at the right level. And I couldn't build this software. I couldn't get this data myself. So I've got to partner with someone like this. And the size of the prize is so massive that this is a no-brainer. So I think most of the brands have like realized that and embraced that. And I think it's awesome. It's been a mutually beneficial partnership in almost all cases.
Yeah, what's interesting, especially from a TikTok shop perspective, it's like in terms of like offloading that business to someone like a Pattern, it's like that role in the social world didn't even exist, right? Because you would normally be like, oh, well, this our person who oversees our TikTok and our Instagram and creating content, they'll run our TikTok shop, but that's literally not like that's a whole other beast, which I feel like it's such a great example of like how we are like perfectly positioned from a marketplace perspective because we're literally filling a role that didn't exist within really at the top of the year when TikTok was like turned off.
Yeah, I think TikTok's a great example because some brands are like scared of TikTok. They're like, I don't know, I could blow a lot of money and I don't know if it's going to work. Other brands are like, I'm really good at this. That's my baby.
Mm-hmm.
Nice part about this model is like, if you're really good at that, if that's your main thing, totally great. A lot of the awareness you build is going to flow over to marketplaces or to D2C. D2C is another good example. A lot of brands are passionate about D2C and they've staffed those teams and they've resourced it and they're really, really good about that. And then they underestimate marketplaces. So, yeah, whatever the brand's really, really good at, my advice would be like, whatever you're really, really good at, do that. And if there's other components, you might be underestimating their complexity. It might be an opportunity for you to consider a partnership there.
Totally. Last couple questions. So just general high level predictions on e-commerce and trends that you're seeing, and where do you see Pattern as a business in a year from now, but then also where do you see Pattern going, I don't know, let's say 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think general trends, and I think Pattern will play in these trends, are you got the way consumers find products changing. So, most of us have used OpenAI or Grok or Gemini or something. So a lot of consumers are now using those tools to find products. So I think that's going to change the e-commerce landscape a lot because, 2 years ago that was zero. Now it's on this like up into the right trend where consumers are using these, and there's no ads in those right now, kind of similar to early Google search days. You'll probably start seeing ads in those products which are sponsored and influencing how consumers find your stuff. So I think that's a major trend that's happening. One way Pattern's playing in that is Pattern released it's called the Geo Scorecard, but this is generative engine optimization scorecard. So the way you're perceived by your consumers is often how influenced by how they find you. So this scorecard helps a brand understand how AI is interpreting the brand and your products. And I think that's a key thing for brands to understand that. It's almost like early days of SEO optimization. You got to optimize your brand so the way these LLMs and AI engines find and discover and describe your business is accurate. So I think that's a major trend. And so I think Pattern will keep playing in that, say a year from now and 10 years from now. That'll be a major component of product discovery and influences consumer purchasing behaviors. And so I think that's a major one. I think there's a lot of other trends like using AI to consume large swaths of data to then go figure out content that converts at a high rate. Go find videos and just any form of content that is most effective. So using great data and tools to go create that and do that at scale and do it much more cost effectively, and then getting it to the right place at the right time. I think a future trend will be Amazon has been flirting with the idea, and hopefully we'll be implementing this fairly soon, but dynamic content. So depending on who the consumer is, showing them different types of content, and you're going to have to be responsive. You're going to have a lot of that content available. You're going to have to make it present at the right time. And I think those are like, there's many others, but those are some trends in e-commerce that I'm excited to see how they unfold. And as consumer, it'll enrich our experience. It'll make our buying and purchase behavior a little different, but also more rich and more streamlined. And brands are going to have to be on their toes and ahead of that.
Yeah, it's like everything in our world is getting curated. It's like your Spotify playlist is now curated to all of the artists that you like. And now I guess with Amazon, it'll be curated to like literally the types of photos that you'd prefer to see when making a purchase, which is wild.
Yeah, I use that DJ in Spotify, and I love that thing.
Love it, right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Rad. Yeah, it's awesome. And if your e-commerce experience was similar, that'd be
Totally.
great.
100%. Last question. Who at Pattern inspires you? Like, who's someone that you love working besides or working with?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people. I think Dave, the founder, probably most people would like say that. I think just innovation, pushing the envelope, seeing what consumers want, seeing what customers want, where their needs lie, and trying to solve for that and making that the North Star. I think similar to the Amazon approach is just like put the customer first and hustle and hustle and hustle. And so there's that, and there's a lot of people in the organization that do that kind of thing. I think folks like Trig and folks like John LeBaron and a bunch of team members like that are kind of putting the consumer first and orienting around their needs and wants. I think that's a phenomenal North Star, and it doesn't mean it'll be easy. It doesn't mean that it's simple. You still have to hustle. You still have to work really hard to deliver something high value, high quality to the consumer. But yeah, there's a couple of the folks that come to mind.
Cool. Doug, thank you so much for coming on Pattern Unboxed. You're welcome to come on and chat whenever.
Anytime. Good to chat, Johnny.